Hi, this podcast is about applying spirituality throughout your life and how you can learn to deal with certain situations as they come up without landing up in a complete state of panic. This podcast was recorded as a series of lectures given to people in 12-step addiction recovery. The purpose of these talks was to teach and motivate individuals to search for their own spiritual solution to their addiction. I hope you enjoyed listening to this conversation, and please feel free to comment as you feel fit. This is a question that often arises, and there are so many ways to look at it, and so many ways to interpret it, and so many ways to define it. Is what is spirituality, and what is the purpose of having spirituality? Why? Why do we need this as part of our recovery? In the AA text, it says in step 10 that we are granted a daily reprieve from our alcoholism and our addiction based on the maintenance of our spiritual program. Now, if anybody in this room is anything like me, then you've tried everything. So I've been to church, they've prayed for me, they shoved me under the water, they sprinkled water on me. They've done everything. Every kind of church thing that you can think of. I tried to make some kind of change, or force some kind of change in my life, to make some kind of difference in what I was doing. And then I come to recovery, and what they say to me is that I need spirituality to recover. Now, when I first came into the program, I was in so much trouble that I was willing to do anything to get out of the situation that I'm in. And if you look at what it says in the AA book, it says that this program works best when there's a crisis. In chapter 7, the chapter speaks about working with others. And in that chapter it says, sometimes it's best to leave an alcoholic to go and burn themselves to pieces before you speak to them about recovery, before you speak to them about wanting to change or do something different. Because it's when a crisis happens that we become most willing and most open to doing things differently, to hearing a different message. And that was the situation that I found myself in. And I came to the AA meeting, and I would have been willing to do whatever it was that they wanted me to do in order to make the drama just go away. Now, fortunately, what was asked of me was not too much. Now, there are various levels that we can look at this stuff from. There are various perspectives that we can look at spirituality from. And one of those methods is following a set of guidelines, following a set of precepts, following a set of doctrines. If somebody is a Catholic, maybe going to Mass, doing confession, doing the Catholic things, going for her first Holy Communions and confirmations and all of that kind of thing. If you're a Buddhist, the Buddhists also have their traditions and their structures and levels that you progress through and that you proceed through and work through. Same with the Scientologists. If you want to become a Scientologist, they also have levels. They also have levels that you that you work through. And I don't know, even the Jehovah's Witnesses, they have their structures. And if you do what the structures say and if you follow the thing, then hopefully your life will become better. So that's one way of applying spirituality, is to follow the rules. And the same can be said for the 12 steps. So step 1, okay, I admit that I'm an alcoholic. I admit that I'm an addict. Step 2, you know what, I would really like to be sane again. I would really like this noise to stop. That would be really great if things were just normal again. Step 3, that there needs to be some kind of higher power. That I need to make a decision to turn my will and my life over to this thing to cause the sanity to happen. Part of that is then I need to examine myself. Step 4 and 5, I need to have a look at myself. Step 8 and 9, I need to make right the wrongs of the past. So there's a definite outline there. There's a definite set of guidelines, and anybody can follow those set of guidelines, and I promise you that over a period of time your life will get better. Simple. Because these things are not complicated things. You don't drink. You make right the wrongs of the past. You examine yourself. I mean, that's what Leonardo da Vinci did. If it worked for him, why can't it work for us? Now, I'm talking about a level of looking at recovery, a level of working recovery. A level of looking at spirituality, a level of working spirituality. Now, I did that myself, that way. I followed the words on the page. And I did that, and I'm still sober from the first time that I stopped drinking, 1996, I think it was. Up until now, I haven't drank it. And for 14 years, I've followed the rules of the program, and I stayed sober. There was one little problem, though, with that, is that it didn't feel like my life was getting any better. I mean, things were getting, I got better jobs, I was happier, I had more freedom, I was earning more money, things were improving, but inside of myself, it still felt like I was in Cape Town with a map of Joburg trying to find my way around, because I didn't understand what was going on in life. I didn't understand how things worked. I didn't have that really deep sense of peace, that deep sense of freedom that I was searching for, that sense of what I like to call wholeness, being whole, not feeling like there's something missing, like there's something wrong with me, like there's some kind of problem, like I have some kind of problem. So my quest is for wholeness, is to feel complete. That is the direction, that is all the work that I do is in search of that objective. Because I felt for so many years like there was something missing, something just didn't connect. Something, there was just a little something that was missing. Like I say, work was going great. I enjoyed what I was doing. I had a really, really nice job. So I'll paint you a little picture of what I mean. My whole family at one stage all owned hotels. My uncle in Cape Town had 2 hotels. I had 2 uncles in Pretoria that each had a hotel. My dad had a hotel. I started working in the family business, and I was supposed to take over the family business, which was to run the hotel. That was what was supposed to happen. And I was sober for a long time, and I was working in the business. But I was just unable to make that move from working in the place to taking the initiative and taking the responsibility to take it over and to run it. And there was nothing that I could have done to do that. It just wasn't in me. I just didn't know how to do it. So, we can look at statistics. And the statistics say that in family businesses, the 3rd generation in a family business usually messes up that family business. And I was the 3rd generation. My grandfather, my dad, and then me. That's what the statistics say. But then you look at an organization like Anglo-American, been running for a long time, many generations. There are many businesses that don't go through that process. So what is it? Am I just a victim of the statistics? Or is there something in my life that is missing, some inability to live, to take responsibility, to do life? Now, there I am, I'm sober, and I'm working a program, and it still seems like things are passing me by, success is passing me by, life is passing me by, things are not working out for me. And what happened? The business got sold, and I got left behind. That's what happened. There are no free rides, I suppose, just because you stopped drinking. They're not out there handing out awards to sober alcoholics and drug addicts that aren't using drugs anymore, congratulating us for not drinking and not using drugs. There's no committee out there that is evaluating that kind of thing. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. The responsibility lies with me. But what do I do if I'm unable? If I am incapable of taking responsibility? If I can't follow through and do the actions and see my commitments through? Let me just say, following a set of rules of some spiritual organization didn't do that for me. It didn't give me the meaning and the purpose that I needed in my life to move. It didn't shift me in the way that I desperately wanted to, because I don't think I'm alone here in thinking that I want to be successful. I would like to be successful. I would like to do well. I would like to have a house in Cape Town and a house in Ballito and another house here and cars and flying all over the place, and I would like that. I mean, who wouldn't? But it's not just going to fall in my lap. Not just going to happen. And this is where the next level of spirituality comes in. So like I mentioned before, there's nothing wrong with following things the way that they're outlined in any program that you engage in. The second level of spirituality comes in learning how to give up control of my mind and my emotions. Give up control of everything. Now, this is much more difficult to explain. And this is why they have all of these rules and all of these structures in place. Is because what these rules and these structures are actually trying to do is actually they're trying to teach us how to get to the second level of spirituality. But I don't believe that it's possible to get to that deeper level of spirituality without conversation, without speaking to somebody who knows how to get there. It's impossible. Cannot be done. Somebody needs to share that message with you, and you need to talk with somebody about that stuff and clarify and understand and get a little bit of direction. Now, why this letting go business, and what do I mean? Now, I'm talking about very broad concepts that are very difficult to communicate, even more difficult to write down on a piece of paper and give to somebody to follow. So it definitely is open to misunderstanding and misinterpretation and confusion. My family of origin, let's just use the normal vocabulary that they use on Oprah and Dr. Phil. Dysfunctional. I come from a dysfunctional background. If I ended up as an alcoholic or a drug addict, how much of that had something to do with my family of origin? Definitely genetic, that's for sure. And I also learned things from my family of origin. And I learned a lot of confused things. Now add to that I have this genetic thing as well, that also confuses my learning and confuses my understanding and confuses my interpretation. And it's a very interesting dynamic because we can all sit here and have different perspectives about something. But when we talk about spirituality, really, it's only about trying to understand one thing. Not giving our perspective on what it means, but trying to understand it. Because our perspectives are our perspectives. If the object of the exercise is to clarify my perspective, to clarify my understanding, to have a bit of clarity of vision, I need to stop interfering with what is going on inside of my mind and inside of my body. So one way to do that is not to put any chemicals in my body. No drugs. No alcohol, no mind or mood altering things that mess with the chemistry of my brain. Because if my mind has become so confused and so tangled up and so full of misunderstanding because of everything that I'm doing, perhaps what I need to do, not perhaps, what I found that I needed to do was to stop interfering with the things that were going on in my mind and allow it to untangle itself. So hence the letting go. Hence the surrender. So I'll give you an example. Give you a very clear example. I'll give you an example of something that I've experienced many, many times and that I still experience and that I'm still going to experience because it's just part of life. If I am upset and angry, maybe angry is not a good way of looking at things. Let's just say, if I'm upset and I'm anxious, then everything inside me wants to try and make that different than what it is. Everything that I do that I'm thinking about is I feel so awful that all that I want to do is I want to just feel different. How do I stop this? How do I stop thinking about the thing that made me this confused and this upset? So that I can stop feeling confused and upset and anxious. That's the first mistake, is trying to change what our experience is. Our experience is our experience. All of a sudden now I've decided it has to be different. So I start interfering with what is going on in my mind, and I start interfering with what is going on in my body. I don't want to feel the way that I'm feeling, and I don't want to have to deal with the thought processes that I'm thinking. And part of what I said about this level of spirituality that I'm speaking to is letting go. The very first page of the Step Working Guide is telling us the first thing that we have to do is surrender. So, we surrender to the fact, I am feeling this way. And then we feel that way. We experience those emotions. My mind is spinning out of control. Then we allow our minds to spin out of control. That's surrender. That's letting go. That's accepting our reality for the way that our reality is. There's a real big question that comes in. And that question is, who's right and who's wrong? What did I do to deserve this? Why has this happened to me? Everything that we experience in our life, everything, is as a... Geez, you guys are all dying here. Everything that we experience in life is as a direct consequence of choices and decisions that we make. Not choices and decisions that other people make. Why do you land up in rehab? Even if somebody put you here, why did you land up in rehab? Because of choices and decisions that you made. Not because other people put you here. You want to use alcohol and drugs, you're going to land up in rehab. That's what happens. That's the way that it works. 1 + 1 = 2. At least it's rehab and not jail. You will have heard many times, no doubt, Albert Einstein saying, for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. For everything that we do, there is a reaction. Now, the hardest thing to do in situations is to try and identify what our part in those interactions are. What did I do wrong? What can I say is my part in this? And then do something about that. Now you'll remember that I started this whole conversation in saying that I was unable to take responsibility in our family business. Right? I was unable to do that. If I can take some responsibility for my emotional reaction to circumstances and situations and admit that I'm wrong, that is the first step in learning how to take responsibility in my life. Because every situation is going to come down to that. What is my part? What is my part? What did I do? Can I take responsibility for what it is that I've done? accept that, make right for that thing that I've done, and then carry on with my life. Now, over a period of years, I've done that. I've tried to the very best of my ability to do that. I'm very bad at doing that myself. Very, very hard for me when I get into any kind of situation, any kind of conflict, any kind of upsetting situation, any kind of difficult situation. Very hard for me to identify what my problem is, take some kind of ownership of that problem, admit that I'm wrong, and move on. Because I spend most of my time in my head trying to justify my standpoint. Why I'm right and why other people are wrong. That's how I spend the majority of my time. So I need someone to speak to. I need someone to engage in. Now, there's a very, very, very good book written by a guy called Anders Ericsson. And the name of the book is called Peak. If any of you ever remember that title, I would strongly suggest that you have a look at it. It's one of the most brilliant books that I've ever read. What Anders Ericsson did was he looked at what it takes to achieve the highest levels of performance. Peak levels of performance. What does it take for a world-class performer to become a virtuoso, to become brilliant? How do we take our skill levels from one level to the next level? Everybody here knows Wade van Niekerk, right? South African 200 meters, 400 meters runner, Olympic gold medalist, world record holder. I think he's done the hurdles as well. Wade van Niekerk was a good athlete. Wade van Niekerk was, if I'm not mistaken, a South African record holder. He was a high performer, but he didn't get to gold medal status and world record holder status on his own. He didn't, because it's impossible. What he did was he went and he sought out a coach, but not just any coach, a specific coach, a lady who, if I'm not mistaken, had taken people to the Olympics before. And if I'm not mistaken, she was also retired, and he got her out of retirement to train him. And I've heard interviews with her, and she said her primary objective in training Wade was to make sure that he didn't get injured. That was what her main focus was, because he had to run, he had to train, he had to compete, he had to be in the circuit. He wanted to do all of those things. He had that desire in him. But he had to do it consistently over a long period of time without getting injured. And she trained him. And he did. As part of this gentleman, Anders Ericsson's research, what he did was, when he first started the book, was he got people to remember numbers. Now, you will have all no doubt heard that the reason that our telephone numbers have, it used to be 7 numbers, is because 7 numbers is the amount of numbers that the short-term memory can absorb, plus a code in front of it. So now it's 10 numbers. Our cell phone numbers are all 10 numbers, but it used to be 7 numbers. In 012 344 1186. That's what the capacity for numbers that the brain on average has to remember. And he got a volunteer, got a guy in, and they started training on how to remember long lists of numbers. And they started off, it would be 7 numbers, and then it was 9 numbers. So he would get the 9 numbers to remember, and the guy would read the numbers to him. 1 number, 1 second break, another number. Like every second he would give him a number. And he would go to 9, and then he would go to 11, and then 14, and then he'd go back, and then he wouldn't be, and then he'd go back to 11, and the whole time Anders was with him, giving him feedback he would get immediate feedback on his performance. Now, Anders only chose people to engage in this experiment with him that were marathon runners. The reason that he only chose people to engage in this experiment that were marathon runners was because marathon runners have a level of determination and a level of grit and an ability to withstand pain and to push through and to persevere that people who don't run marathons don't necessarily have. And this guy would run into blocks at 21 numbers. He got stuck at 21, and he couldn't move any further than remembering 21 numbers. And he would go away and he would figure out and think about it and process. So anybody who is working on training and improving themselves, it's about having somebody there to give you feedback the whole time. Having determination and grit and perseverance to continue through with your objective no matter how difficult it gets. Feedback loop, and then figuring out a way to get the job done. And this guy moved on to hundreds of numbers. The world champion, these guys, they remember thousands of numbers that are read to them, like I've said to you now, random numbers read at 1 second intervals. We'll do a spiritual group again on Friday, and I'll get the statistics for you. I didn't refresh my memory on all the world championship results, but the numbers are staggering. These people don't just get there. You don't just immediately start remembering 1,000 numbers. You start remembering 7 numbers, and then 11 numbers, and then 21 numbers, and figuring out ways and means and methods to do it, to move on to the next level. So, we talk about spirituality. We're in spiritual group. We're talking about spirituality in spiritual group. Does the same method not apply? Are we not? Do the rules not apply to us? Are we above it? Are we above normal people because we're alcoholics and addicts, that we have an expectation, or we think that these things should just flop into our lap and that we should just be able to do these things and understand how these things work? Or does it fall into that exact zone where we have our biggest weakness and our biggest problem? We think we know everything, and we're unwilling to put any effort and any work in because it's too hard, it's too difficult. So everything is set up. There's the feedback loop. The whole process here, when you sit with your counselor and you have one-on-one sessions with your counselor, part of the feedback loop. Where you sit in concern group, part of the feedback loop. You're getting immediate feedback about the way that you're engaging in life and the way that you're engaging in group, so that you can learn which direction it is that you need to move in, and how to do that. That's what the object of the whole, the purpose of the whole object is. The determination, that's another thing altogether. The grit is another thing altogether. A lot of the books that I read, unfortunately or fortunately, are written by Americans. And the examples that they use are from their country. I'm sure all of you will have seen in the movies West Point Military Academy, Military University. Everybody's always West Point, West Point, West Point, West Point. I'm going to quote some numbers. They're not 100% accurate, but they're ballpark numbers. There are, if I'm not mistaken, 30,000 applicants that get selected to try out to get into the university. And that number gets broken down, and I think they take 1,500, of which I think it was between 400 and 700 actually stay. So, to qualify, you already have to be at a very high standard. You already have to be super fit, physically in great shape, have the academic marks. You're already competing on a top level with other people who are competing on the same level. And what it comes down to at the end of the day, those few hundred, because the other few hundred that qualify, they don't stay. They leave. But the ones that stay and the ones that see it through are the ones who have the perseverance, the determination, the thick-skinnedness to see through whatever it is that they've undertaken to do. To learn through that process. To be humble, to be a student. To learn. So, is it a case of just being arrogant? Is that why people don't make it? Just because they think that they know everything, because they can't be humble, because they can't accept that maybe I'm wrong. You know, maybe the fault does lie with me. Maybe, you know, I'm looking at all of these situations. I don't understand what is going on or why, but I've come up with my own theory, and I don't care what anybody says. It's my theory, and I'll go down with my theory because it's my theory. So screw all of you. You know, we all experts at that. You know, my plan, even if it kills me, it's my plan. Arrogance, pure arrogance. I don't need help from anybody. I've got this. I know what I'm doing. In spite of the fact that we've never been able to do it before. All the evidence is there for that. Now, I listen to myself sometimes. And I even make sense to myself. You know, when I speak, when I talk in a group like this and I listen and I'm like, you know, that makes so much sense. We sit here and we talk about these things and it's so clear and uncomplicated and not confused. The problem is tomorrow it won't be as clear. Because the work that I put in today and the effort that I put in today will give me the dividends and the results today, not tomorrow. I always feel motivated. I can feel motivated, but my motivation usually lasts for 3 days, and then I don't feel motivated anymore. So that was what it was like for me at school. Go to high school. I remember, standard 8. I hated Shakespeare. I hated Shakespeare. Absolutely despised Shakespeare. I did not understand it. I did not want to understand it. I'm a massive reader. I read a lot. When I was in school, I read Lord of the Rings. When I was in standard 4, it's a huge book like this. I read it in 2 weeks. I'm very proud of that achievement for a very, very long time. Avid reader. I love to read. They asked us to read Macbeth and Tess of the D'Urbervilles. Tess of the D'Urbervilles is a horrific book. It's an absolute nightmare. It is so boring, so dull. Absolutely, I had no interest in it. I had no interest in Macbeth. I still have very little interest in Macbeth, I must say. But at the beginning of the year, I said to myself, this is it now. I've got to do this. I've got to do my assignments, because I remember in standard 7 from grade 9 that I stuffed it up completely because I didn't stick with it from the beginning. And to do Macbeth successfully in high school, you have to do it every day. You have to do a little bit every day, and eventually you work through it. And if I had to go find my old high school book now, you will find for the first 3 days, the first week of the form, I did my homework, and then I did nothing else. I didn't write one word in that book. It was an empty book, and the teacher used to come and check, and she used to say, why didn't you do your homework? And I'd say, I forgot, man. There was nothing in there. So it's very easy to be at that point, like, right, this is what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be doing this now, and this is the way that we're going to be doing it. And then 3 days later, all that motivation is gone, and I don't feel like doing anything anymore. That's why the effort that I put in today to let go and to surrender will serve me for today, not tomorrow. Tomorrow I need to start fresh, and I need to do it again. If I don't understand what is being asked of me, I need to research, and I need to try it. Because remember, it's not about your perspective of what surrender and letting go is. It's about trying to understand what it actually means. To get past your own perspective. And to try and understand.